Welcome, everyone, to episode 16 of the Total Relationship Podcast. I'm Kim Cochenour, COO and CCO at Form Wealth Advisors, joined by my co-host Tyson Ray, CEO of Form Wealth Advisors. Today, we're here to shift your perspective on annual reviews. Your clients' lives are not about performance. Based on what you think, here's what you're here to help them focus on and what's important, because they are the most important person in the room, not the performance. So we're going to really get into avoiding familiarity bias this morning, what should be on your pre-meeting checklist, and how you can proactively reprioritize yourself by involving other team members. So let's get into it. Tyson, you love trying to teach advisors about how to pull performance out of their annual reviews and why that's a good discomfort to have. So talk about that. Why should advisors pull performance out of their annual reviews?
You know, after a few of these podcasts, I've learned not to interrupt your.
Oh,
I
we
want
can
to.
all learn and grow, right?
I want to. Like I just bite my tongue and just I have lots of things. All right, so now that I've totally lost my train of thought with that comment, because I was thinking of what I wanted to say instead of listening, which is a key thing you got to learn as an advisor.
My word, everybody, you're getting a peek behind the curtain.
Kind of like, hello. Okay, so I caught the annual reviews. What do you want me to? What?
Why advisors should pull performance out of their annual reviews, and why is that actually a good discomfort for them?
Because that's not where your value add lies with things you can control and how you can advise a client, and performance of the markets of investments, and much less the past. The past can show what has happened, in the future no one knows. And so it's definitely not something to lead with, or not something to be the focal point, which I think too many firms, the industry, advisors want to show or point to clients as that's their value add, or that's why they matter. And I believe, and I think I've proven to myself over 25 years, that's not what the clients are looking for.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a security blanket, because as you go through school, you don't have to have a background in finance to sit down with the client. You need to have licenses, but the licenses talk a lot about performance. Licenses get into a lot of facts, and that can be a security blanket for a lot of advisors, because they're not really taught how to approach the client and ask those questions. And so I think it's important for advisors to realize that might be their security blanket that's important to let go of.
Well, the reality is that you don't have to have a relationship with the client to produce a performance report. A performance report is produced by technology and you clicking your mouse and then you going and finding one of hundreds of different benchmarks to show that somehow you beat something, to therefore justify your existence, if that's all you're doing. And yet what we want to try and get across with this total relationship concept is there's an easier way. There's so much more you could be doing that you can control, and therefore you don't have to be embarrassed in having an annual review when you're trying to find some benchmark you beat.
Yeah. Well, that vulnerability in relationships is always hard, but I think many advisors might not realize that their clients are there to develop a relationship with them. Money is very personal. Sitting down every year at a minimum to go through what's going on in their life and what's going on in their finances, how those are intrinsically linked, it's a really important time to reconnect with the client. And that kind of leads into the topic of familiarity bias. What's your advice to advisors how to not get too familiar in that relationship so that they can actually serve their clients better by asking good questions?
Yeah, I think so. I think before I answer that, I want to go back to the performance reports for a second. So some of the ways I've helped wean some of the addicts off of these performance reports and your reviews, like you can bring that to the meeting, so you can have it all prepared, so you can feel warm and fuzzy and comfy and ready, and it's like you're used to doing this. And then you can ask this really powerful question wherever you were going to enter into this review of performance. I would encourage you to say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I've brought this performance report that I'm excited about and I'm happy to go over with. But before I go over it with you, I want to let you know that basically you're on track. You're okay relative to your plan. Everything is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And for everything that I can see, if you continue to follow my advice, you're going to be okay. You're not going to run out of money in your lifetime. You're going to be able to do these goals. Now, based on that, do you want me to go through this 5, 10, 15, 100-page report to explain all that to you, or is that enough? And what
Yeah.
you're going to find 99.99999% of the time, they'll be like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Because they sit there and listen because they think they have to. And you don't have to go over stuff they don't want to know. And in fact, because they don't want to go over it is your value add, because you get to worry about that for them. I'm not saying don't pay attention to the performance aspect and what rates of return and where risk lie, but most clients are hiring you to take care of that, not sit there and explain it to them year after year after year, when that's not why they're sitting there. And that's certainly not what they're worried about most of the times.
Yeah, that's what they care. Like, that's why they have you in the room. And so, again, you're not saying to disregard performance. You're not saying disregard what you're doing from a planning standpoint and looking out for your client's best interest. What you're saying is don't let that be the leading topic of the annual review. In this world, face-to-face time is so rare. So if you actually can get that time, focus on getting those things that you can't pull from a PDF report.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to circle you back to familiarity bias. One of the things that we take a very serious approach on is when we sit down and go through all the questions in the client's life plan, is kind of to go from the standpoint of not completely pretending we don't know anything, but just re-asking those questions, revisiting those things. And I think that's really important so that you don't just become a friend to the client, you still can sit in that advisory seat and have that total relationship. So talk about that for advisors who don't understand that concept.
Yeah. So we say to clients when they're coming on board, and I'll say to clients in annual review meeting, I reserve the right to once a year pretend like I don't know you and take you through the process that we have of asking questions to make sure that we have the most up-to-date answers based on what you're thinking now, not what you were thinking the last time I asked it. And it brings a newness to the relationship. Quite frankly, I think spouses should do that with each other. Hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? Do you want to have any more kids? Right? Just, you might know the answer, but sometimes creating the dialogue helps. Any more education? But for the client, again, taking them through that total relationship set of questions. And obviously, if you have known facts like, okay, I don't need to ask about the parents anymore when I have the dates or the ages where the parents passed away, those are facts. Now I can ask how they feel about their own longevity and then use that information to help remind them that they may be living a lot longer if we just use their deceased parents' ages. I did that twice yesterday. Updates on the kids. I may have the kids as clients and know what the update is, but I'll still want to get the update from the parent to find out, what do they know? What's the other side of that story, or what's the other piece of information? And it allows the dialogue of reminding us why we have this foundational trust that we're seeking to basically continue to earn the right to have with the client by going back through at a high level what matters most to them, to understand what the money's for in the first place, that a performance report doesn't tell you.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a good point to address, at least on an annual basis, those kinds of questions with clients, because things do change. They could have had a friend who passed away suddenly from cancer, and that changes how they want to be spending their money. They might have had a child who has a terminal diagnosis. That's going to change their perspective on what they're doing. And if you don't have a relationship developed with the client to where you can ask those questions annually and all you do is talk about performance, you will sit there and lose the ability to be at that space and that table in those conversations with clients like that. Or you're likely to lose the ability to have the privilege to help them make those changes, because they're going to want to go to someone who can help them make those decisions. And that's what your responsibility should be as an advisor.
Yep. So every annual review with a client starts with a question to the client. what questions do you have for us, if any? And I want to tackle those first, all of them, whatever they are. I don't want to go through my agenda or the updates I want to have to find out. I burned up all the time to find out we didn't get to whatever the pressing issue they wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And probably half of the updates I want to get are going to come out of whatever they're about to say.
Yep.
And yet there's Nick Murray talks about the question behind the question. And so I also so I start with, what do you want to cover in this meeting? What do you want to get out of this meeting? I want to start with those questions first. I end with, after we've gotten that out of the way and gotten all the updates I have and did everything we needed to do to take them through that total relationship, I end with, is there anything else we can be doing for you that we're not? And is there any concern you really still have that we need to address before you walk out of here? Yesterday, with an 80-year-old, multi-million-dollar 80-year-old, who we spent the first half of the meeting trying to help her understand, yes, you can take $2,500 a month out of the account, and it's okay, you're just saving in the bank, but it gives you the opportunity to still save money in retirement, which is important to you. And at some point, we're going to find ways to spend that, because that's what it's for. So I thought we addressed all that. And when I asked any other concerns that you have, and what she said is she said, well, I've been concerned that I lost the $1 off coupon at Culver's ice cream. So the Culver's ice cream cone, you can rip it off the bag.
Yes.
Do I still need to worry about that? I said, no, you're fine. True story. That was a 10 o'clock meeting. My 4 o'clock meeting yesterday, a 70-year-old multimillionaire, not taking any money out of the portfolio because she's living off the pensions and things that she has, and ended with, any concerns? She said no. And I'm walking her out to the car, and she's like, I feel like I just get concerned about the little things. I said, that's normal. I said, I had somebody else who's 10 years older than you are, has about as much money as you have, who her concern was that she lost a $1 off coupon for the Culver's ice cream. And she's like, oh, I got a bunch in the car. Do I need to give her one? And it's just, that's the relationship and the camaraderie and just the things you can do when you get off of facts and figures and pie charts and trying to add value by showing, hey, last year, quarter, week, month, we did compared to this. And it's just like, that doesn't matter. Helping them realize they can let go of the little things, because they understand every client, I don't care what their wealth is, every client, the smaller the dollar amount gets, the $1 coupon, a $10 fee, an upgrade to first class, they understand $5, $10, $15, $20,000 so much more, with so much more meaning and feeling and impact than they understand millions. And showing them a performance report of what their millions does not communicate to them what they really are worried about or what they really need to be talking about, which is, how are you spending the $10, $15, $20,000 for the home improvement, or for the gift to the kid, or for the ice cream cone, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That can come out of these relationship-like annual reviews that we do.
Yeah. Well, and a big part of building those relationships comes with you being prepared and the team being prepared. And so we're actually going to provide a free copy of a checklist we use internally, our annual review prep checklist. So it'll be available for download at totalrelationship.com/annual review. And one of the things that's kind of helps our team and you be ready for the annual reviews is we just have a high level, what's in the cash reserve accounts, any big purchases that we know of that are coming up, so we can readdress those. Have they taken their RMDs? Do we have a list of all their beneficiaries? So talk through how that checklist really helps the team be prepared in that meeting and why that's critical.
It's just making sure we have all the facts that we need to go into the meeting to then address what concerns arise, and to confirm that this data is still correct. But notice it's all relational data. It's not, and it's all pertinent information to them that's important. I saw an annual review in a presentation about a year or two ago from one of my peers, very successful. And if I copied that annual review, it would have started with, in the current recording that we're doing, it's like, okay, there's a war in Israel, and this is what's going on. And there's a war in Ukraine, and this is what's going on. And, Japan's floating ships past China's little sacred seas, and there's fights about that. And we got this whole issue going on in November. And it was like, oh my gosh, like you're starting with these are all the things you should be or could be worried about. And it's
Mm-mm.
like, okay, yeah, if you want to add fuel to that fire, I'm sure you can flush out their concerns and then spend a bunch of time talking about a bunch of stuff that you have no control over. But if I
Yeah.
did that yesterday, I wouldn't have found out the concern is $1 off coupon,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And so part of the team prepping is to basically make sure we have in the technology tools we use what their answers were. So now when I'm asking open-ended questions about any home improvements, I'm looking to see if they've crossed off any of those things, or I'll bring back up. Did you still want to redo the bathroom, the boys' bathroom? Or do you want to wait till they get out of the house? Or do you still want to do, are you still taking that vacation?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Are we going somewhere else? What's the next one? And so the beneficiaries designations, it's like, those are things you can't check them enough. And is that still what you want?
Yeah.
Especially with the accumulators, like the 3 o'clock call yesterday, I was just asking, hey, any updates to the estate plan and stuff? And they kind of hemmed and hawed and said, yeah, who we have is the custodians. They got divorced. And so now we're thinking about that. And it's like, okay, can we help facilitate the conversation with the attorney to go update that, helping them realize they don't have to redo their trust. It's just redoing the will where those provisions sit. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's not click, produce the report, print it, and then talk off that report. It's
Yeah.
it's it's keeping track of the notes for these relational questions we've asked in the past and updating them.
Yeah. Well, and it's helpful for advisors to get that done a week or two in advance so that if there's something that we do need from the client, we can ask them that in advance and they can bring that with them instead of asking that question when they get there and they're like, gee, had I only known. It allows the client to come and be prepared for the meeting. But then it also speeds up the time for your team on the other end to complete what they need because then they don't have 5 other tasks out there other than their standard follow-up. So it really puts the client in a position where that they can get a really comprehensive time with the advisor and advisory team to be prepared and just get that handled in advance. But Tyson, what you hit on earlier is an important thing. I think some advisors will be overwhelmed by the idea of like, oh my gosh, here's this other thing I need to do. It's like a big part of what we've done is built a good team. And so it's important to kind of delegate tasks to the team because if you're trying to bring more people into the relationship, you can't be the only one who knows these things. You can't be the only one in the CRM updating data. So can you share how this has benefited you and helping get you out of the weeds and developing the team?
Well, when it was just me, I realized I needed a system outside of the legal pads I started with to capture the data, because of it, what you want as an advisor and what the client wants out of an annual review is I want those clients to leave knowing they've been heard. Not only in that meeting, but I heard you before about what the concern, the issue, the goals, the opportunities were. And using technology and building fields to go capture these relational data points, and sometimes it's goals, sometimes it's emotions, a lot of it's family and their own health. And then when I started bringing on teams, because I was watch other professions, it's like, hey, I can't remember the last time I was in a doctor's office where it was just the doctor, right? Someone's now just reeling right behind them with a laptop and they're typing away. And so a couple of years ago, we duplicated that model, and I have other team members sitting in those meetings, caching those information firsthand. I know it's getting plugged in. And I know the next time I pull up that chart, if you will, there's going to be their answer, or there's going to be what was discussed. And at the same time, because that teammate's in there, that teammate is also now the one that's also bridging that relationship, because they're hearing firsthand what the questions were and what the answers were. And they're able to go follow up with that client on whatever some of these things are we got to fix or address or update or check in on. And because they heard it firsthand and the client saw them in that meeting, it transfers and amplifies and enhances that relationship we have with a client.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And I think that it's an important piece if you want to be able to grow your firm and you want to keep being able to be the advisor who helps speak in and make those changes, make those adjustments, but you're in bestowing that relationship to someone who can care about that client the same way that you do and will have a heart for that in ways that you might not even. So I think it's really important to kind of wrap up the show today. It's important to consider what you do for your annual reviews by pulling performance out of that and not letting that be the driving factor, and really get to the focus of what the client wants to talk about. You can
And
avoid familiar.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, it's like we can avoid familiarity bias by not getting too focused on just thinking you know everything about the client and revisiting those things. And then also, please use the free resource that we have for the annual review prep. So, Tyson, I want to throw it to you as we wrap it up. What other words of wisdom would you want to leave listeners with today?
Yeah, the fun thing about going through this process and not using the fun thing about going through this process is this: it's this client that I met with yesterday, and it just reiterates why we're doing it. Just so is the success of why we're doing what we're doing, and the
Mhm.
how are you doing in the update. She was excited that she was spending $100 to get her car detailed. Now her car's like 10 years old. She only has like 50,000 miles on it. She puts like 3,000 miles a year on it. But once upon a time, a couple of years ago, she had made a comment that someday she wanted to buy a Jag. She's 80.
Oh,
And so she's telling me how, because she spent $100 to update this 2015 car, it feels like it's brand new to her. And
hmm.
what this system allows us to do is allows me to look at her and say, so I guess we're not getting the Jaguar. And she about fell out of her chair laughing. Now, keep in mind that when she first told us she wanted a Jag, and then we tried to push a little bit of how serious she was, and she said, "No, it's never going to happen." We kind of got specific, what color, et cetera, et cetera. We went and found a Matchbox toy car and sent it to her as this is what the future could hold. Maybe it just needs to be a little bigger. And again, that's all the relational stuff that can happen in a meeting that I think some advisors even do, but maybe wouldn't have. I would have never remembered the Jaguar comment had we not noted that in the vehicle
Yeah,
section of our life plan that we're trying to do with these relationships. And
yeah,
the camaraderie that can come from those is exactly what I want, because it cements the relationship. It adds humor. It adds, we heard you. And it adds, hey, it's okay if you want to keep driving the 2015 and you found that detailing makes it feel new, and that's wonderful. And yet we can laugh about something that she helped tell us and build that relationship, that if I had tried to spend the time going through a performance report, we would never have bridged that gap or been able to go leave on that note.
yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that speaks highly to is you cannot have all the intellectual capital about the relationships with your clients in your head. It has to be documented somewhere. It'll allow you to serve your clients really well. You want to remember those things. Advisors care about their clients. They'd want to be able to pull that back, but taking the time to put that information into a system, like we have our life plan that we document that in, really makes a big difference. And so I think it's a tool to help advisors, not really a diss on advisors for not being able to remember. There's just too many clients that you care deeply about. You can't remember everything.
And in trying to make, again, the goal, what's the goal? It's to make their life better, which isn't looking backwards at a bunch of numbers compared to some hypothetical thing they probably don't understand. It's
Yeah,
helping to understand where they are now with what they have now and what they want to do today and tomorrow into the future, and encouraging them to do that
yeah,
with the money that they
absolutely.
have.
Yeah. It's a good, a worthy role to have in someone's life. So, thank you for tuning in to episode 16 of the Total Relationship Podcast. If you haven't already, click follow and subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes are available. New episodes are available every Tuesday. And check out the episode description for links to free resources and to connect with Tyson and me on LinkedIn. Follow Total Relationship page on LinkedIn to join a community of like minded advisors. Until next time.